THQ was one of the most recognizable names in gaming. Wrestling titles that defined an era, licensed games that shaped childhoods, open worlds where chaos reigned, and a portfolio so wide you could find a THQ logo in just about every section of the game store. But behind the familiar branding was a company in constant transformation, from toys to tie-ins, from safe bets to risky blockbusters. And while THQ's library still holds some of the most beloved games of the 2000s, its story ended in one of the industry's most dramatic collapses. This is the rise and fall of THQ, and the games that built and ultimately broke one of gaming's most prolific publishers. THQ's story begins in April 1990. Jack Friedman, already known for co-founding toy company LJN, started Toy Headquarters, THQ for short, in Calabasas, California. At first, they sold toys and video games. The early lineup leaned heavily on movie and TV licenses: Home Alone, The Lawnmower Man, Wayne's World. None of these titles redefined the industry, but they did make money, important for a young publisher trying to carve out a place in the market dominated by Nintendo, Sega, and Capcom. By 1994, THQ dropped toys entirely and went all in on video games. They hit their first big stride in the wrestling genre, partnering with WCW for WCW vs. the World in 1997, and later in 1999 transitioning to the WWF license. This led to the first WWF SmackDown in 2000 on PlayStation, a faster, flashier alternative to the other wrestling titles, and the SmackDown series quickly became a fan favorite and a cornerstone for THQ's yearly release schedule. These games weren't just a niche hit, they sold millions, helped define the PlayStation's multiplayer couch experience, and gave THQ a reliable annual cash cow. In the early 2000s, THQ built its empire on licensed games. The big turning point came in 2001 when they signed an expanded deal with Nickelodeon. This opened the floodgates. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, Rugrats Royal Ransom, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, Tak and the Power of Juju, and Avatar The Last Airbender would all become video games under THQ. While many licensed games in this era were just cash grabs, some of THQ's stood out. Battle for Bikini Bottom in particular became a cult classic, and it was praised for its platforming, humor, and faithfulness to the source material. And nearly 2 decades later, it was remade as Rehydrated. They didn't stop there. THQ also partnered with Pixar for adaptations like Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, and Ratatouille. They even published Disney's The Lion King 1.5 game, and for younger audiences, they became the go-to publisher. If a parent was buying a game for their kid's favorite movie or cartoon, chances were high that THQ's logo was on it. Meanwhile, wrestling games evolved. SmackDown became SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, often considered one of the greatest wrestling games ever made. And by mid-decade, THQ had locked down both the family market and the wrestling fanbase. By the mid-2000s, THQ had mastered licensed games, but the industry was shifting. Gamers wanted bigger, riskier, original IPs, and THQ decided to compete in that space. They acquired Volition, which launched Saints Row in 2006 as an Xbox 360 exclusive, and it was an open-world crime game with a GTA style, just with a little more absurd humor and over-the-top action. It sold over 2 million copies, cementing it as a core THQ franchise. In 2004, they had acquired Relic Entertainment, bringing RTS excellence with Company of Heroes and the Dawn of War series. These games weren't just critically acclaimed, Company of Heroes is still considered one of the best RTS games ever made. Then came Vigil Games in 2006, which debuted Darksiders in 2010, a post-apocalyptic action-adventure blending Zelda-style dungeons with God of War-style combat. THQ also resurrected Red Faction in 2009's Red Faction Guerrilla, famous for its Geomod engine that allowed full building destruction, a technical marvel at the time. Even niche titles like MX vs. ATV Unleashed carved out loyal audiences. For a while, THQ seemed to have it all. Licensed hits, sport dominance, open world chaos, strategy masterpieces, and experimental action adventures. But big ambitions came with big risks. In 2010, THQ launched the U-Draw game tablet for Wii. It did surprisingly well, so in 2011, they released HD versions for the Xbox 360 and PS3, and that is where things went wrong. The sales were abysmal, and by the end of the year, 1.4 million units were still sitting unsold, leading to a staggering $100 million loss. For a company already starting to deal with rising development costs, this was a pretty staggering blow. On top of that, their much hyped FPS title, Homefront, released in 2011 with massive marketing, but the reviews were only lukewarm, and the stock price dropped 25% the day that the reviews hit for the game. The developer, Chaos Studios, was then shut down shortly after. In 2012, they lost the UFC license to EA, ending another long-standing revenue stream. That year alone, THQ reported losses of nearly $240 million. Studios were closing, staff were getting laid off, and despite having critically acclaimed games like Saints Row III and Darksiders 2, the financial damage was too severe. In December of 2012, THQ eventually filed for bankruptcy, initially planning to sell the company whole to Clear Lake Capital, but the court ordered an open auction. And over 2 days in January of 2013, THQ's assets were sold off. Sega bought Relic Entertainment, Deep Silver acquired Volition in the Metro franchise, Ubisoft took THQ Montreal and South Park, The Stick of Truth, Crytek got Homefront, and the WWE license, a THQ staple for over a decade, went to 2K Sports. Even Darksiders, one of their most promising IPs, found no buyer in the initial auction, and it was later picked up by Nordic Games. In 2014, Nordic Games bought the THQ trademark. 2 years later, they rebranded as THQ Nordic, reviving and remastering classic titles like Darksiders, Destroy All Humans, and Red Faction Guerrilla. The original THQ is gone, but its DNA lives on in these games, and in the memories of the players who grew up with them. THQ is a cautionary tale. Diversify too fast, take one too many risks, and even the most prolific publishers can fall. But it's also a story of unforgettable games, ones that shaped gaming history, and still bring joy today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment down below of what I should do next. This is West Coast Ninja, signing out.